Hello everyone, and welcome to the UBA Season 4 Week 1 Power Rankings. So this will be the first Power Rankings this season based on results and not on draft, unlike the last one. We're going to have some really low production quality this time, unfortunately, because it's 1:30 a.m. right now, and I have to be up at like 8, and I don't feel like making a PowerPoint. So you're stuck here, but I did think it would be kind of cool to physically look at the videos or replays of each game, so I can talk about certain plays instead of having to describe them over while looking at a PowerPoint. So at least there's that advantage. Other than that, I guess we'll get right into it. So in a handy little high production quality slider list, we've got number 12 Mars, who played Jolty this week, Mars did a particularly bad job of preserving his breakers and means of breaking down Jolty's fat. Perhaps he doesn't have a lot of matchup experience versus Jolty and understand how Jolty likes to play, but even then you probably should understand just from looking at his team how fat it is, and that you do in fact need to bring means to break it down. So as we start, for pretty much the biggest threats to Jolty's team off of face value are the Hydreigon, the Mamo, and the Medi. Coco to some extent too, because it can Volt Switch, get in Medi over and over again. So if Mars is able to get in Medi a lot, possibly even Mamo with Volt Switches and U-turns from Hydri and Coco, he will have a pretty good time breaking down Jolty's team. So I think that should be his game plan going into the game. But unfortunately, he leads Mamo versus Pharaoh. Also, Mamo is his only rocker. So if this has rocks, or if he has rocks in his team at all, it's here. And rocks are definitely very important if you're trying to break down a fat team like this, and trying to do it with U-turn. But he just stays in turn 1, misses the Iso Crash, which is unfortunate, but it did not kill, and just Iso Gyro, which is like giant threat out of the way. Turn 1, I'm pretty sure Jolty would have been just as happy had he Iso Crash and done like 50 or whatever it did. So I think it was a really poor play from Mars turn 1. Also, probably not too great prep either to have nothing that comfortably comes in on Pharaoh. That's usually something you need to have if you're playing it, because it will annoy you and kind of just seed up on everything if you don't have a particularly good fire fighting type that can come in, and Medi is not very sturdy and can't do that. As we'll soon find out, it comes in. Jolty protects, just got the high jump kick, eats the Choppel, and takes out Medi too. Basically kills it. So like the two biggest threats to his team that could have broken are out the way immediately. Mars makes a double, predicting the crest, which is a solid play, but then gets bopped by the Colbur, which is good prep from Jolty. I don't know there's too much you could have done about that from Mars's point of view, except maybe scout for it, but it's a tough scout to make. But at this point, the only thing on Mars's team that can kill this Cresselia is this Hydreigon. So if this Hydreigon is not running Roost, especially on a Life Orb set, then this is really a really bad set. And if it and if he is running Roost and just chooses to Dark Pulse and die here, that's a really idiotic play, because like he dropped his special attack, so you know this isn't killing. So you like either you have Roost and just choose to kill your Hydreigon for nothing here, or you just made a really bad set. Hydreigon should always have Roost, especially if you're going to bring the Life Orb variant. But he just loses Hydreigon here for no reason, and that was his only means of breaking this crest. So at this point, the game's effectively over. He lost all 3 of his mons basically that were capable of doing any breaking whatsoever. So past this point, Jolty just constricts him, and there's just nothing he can do. Has absolutely no means of breaking down this core down here, and they just slowly eat him away. I think had Mars played his momentum and breaking much more competently, he had a really solid chance of taking down Jolty's team. Jolty did have some nice prep with like Choppel Pharaoh, Culver, Cress. So that was pretty cool on his side, but Mars kind of just threw the game out within the first 6 turns. So Mars needs to play much more carefully and more meticulously with his breakers, and really kind of formulate a game plan of how he's going to get them in and get what he wants, because that was not how you do it. So yeah, that's why he's ranked last on my rankings. So number 11, next up we got Pete. Which one is that matchup? Is it this one? No. Yeah. Pete, sort of a similar story, except he doesn't really have very many breakers on his team. I don't think his prep was particularly good here. He relied a lot on Autotomai's Komodo trying to sweep late game, but didn't really seem to bring anything that allowed him to meet those conditions. The lead matchup, he leads the Stunfisk. Gets U-turned on. It's a bit dangerous, I guess, because this thing's got static, right? Yeah. Good play by Jack to go Serena, anticipating rocks, though. Good play by Pete as well to try and fish for the burn, and he does get it. And then U-turns on the Serena, and so things are actually going pretty well for Pete, and then everything goes out the window right here. When you U-turn, it's pretty obvious that Serena is also U-turning at this point. It's a weird play by Jack to stay in on the Talon. I guess he just really didn't value it. I still think he probably could have gone arrow, though, because like there's really nothing a Talon could ever do to an arrow, unless he like had a really hard read on U-turn. I'm not exactly sure why he chose to risk that, but I guess he did. But at that point, you need to, if you're in Pete's shoes, you have to probably consider that he probably clicked U-turn in that scenario and like go literally anything besides Stunfisk, because Stunfisk lets in Chomp, and if you look at Pete's team right now, Chomp is an absolutely massive threat. He really has no switch-ins to Earthquake, and nothing that beats it after taking an Earthquake. Talon can come in and not get killed by Earthquake, but like, what does it do back? And Stunfisk just lets Chomp come in absolutely for free. So Pete's put instantly in a really bad scenario by making that play. So I think like really his only option here is to probably, I don't know, maybe go Prima if it can take 2 Earthquakes. If not, sack, or maybe go Talon and get some chip. But he chooses to stay in and fish for the burn. This is his only response to Raikou at this point. Raikou is also a massive threat if you look at his team. No ground types here. Zera can Volt Absorb, but it doesn't beat Raikou. Or the only ground type is Stunfisk, rather. So he really needs this to keep the Raikou in check, and leaves it in, risking a 16% chance, or risking a 30% chance to burn as the reward for staying in, and death as the risk, and chooses to stay in twice and then just dies. So at this point he's lost his Raikou response. Jack has rocks up. Jack has like a burnt Serena at 30 as his only casualty, while Talonflame's like half dead now because of rocks. Stunfisk fully dead. So yeah, things are not looking good for Pete. In the past like 2 turns, he kind of just threw out any momentum he had and put himself in an awful scenario. So at this point, you probably would want to go Pre-Marina, to be honest, because at least it claims one with Moonblast, because it reveals to be Specs, He was Talonflame and Wisp. If this thing was Stone Edge, you still died either way. And then you got, I don't know, maybe you don't get swept by Earthquake after. Maybe Scizor can wall, I don't know. But Jack makes a good play in Scouts for that. And so now Pete is just in an atrocious scenario. I guess he predicts the U-turn. I don't know if Darm gets Stone Edge or if he needed to fear anything there. But he gets the U-turn into Arrow, and he's got to switch something into Arrow, and he doesn't have anything that switches in well besides maybe, no, Commode. It gets Aerial Ace. No, nothing that switches well into this. So it just seems like Chomp and Arrow, Jack's two biggest threats. He has next to no prep to stop them. His only answered Arrow is offensively checking it with Scizor, and you take 59 from Stone Edge, which is not acceptable for a check. At this point, you need to make plays too if you're Pete, because you're very far behind at this point. So you either need to roost or U-turn, anticipating him to respect the Bullet Punch. Pete does neither, I'm pretty sure, and just Bullet Punches straight into Suicune, and like that seals his fate. There's absolutely nothing you can do. You got nothing out of that turn. Now you cannot answer Arrow because you did not roost. You can't do anything. You've already lost to Raikou now at this point. Jack overpredicts a little bit and actually lets Scizor get back to health, which I guess works out for him, but it's still not going to help him with anything because at the end, Prima actually does come in and hacks Pete into getting hacks Jack into forcing him into a sack. But yeah, at this point he can just bring in Raikou and there's nothing he can do. Raikou just claims, just kills everything. So yeah, he brought next to no prep for Arrow and Garchomp. Kind of just had to sack when either of them came out. Sacked his only answer to Raikou, so pretty much all of Jack's offense just went completely unchecked. So pretty lackluster prep, and yeah, and at the end the Komodo couldn't even kill the Raikou it was trying to set up on, so it really didn't have any chance of reverse sweeping, and even if it had no means to kill the Arrow thereafter, and would have died to Aerial Ace or Wing Attack, whichever he chose to run. So yeah, quite an unimpressive game from Pete as well as Mars to start the season. So moving up to number 10, I have Ruby, which is this game, right? Yeah. So what happened this game? Ruby plays her Rotom Wash extremely poorly early game and really just does not utilize her Kyurem to the fullest. So when you have, this is probably one of the best matchups Kyurem Black is going to have all season. Cody has like Tentacruel at base 100. Everything else is slower than Kyurem besides Mega Manectric, and Mega Manectric cannot kill Kyurem in like Rabombi, but Rabombi's trash. So Kyurem has an absolute feast on his team. It is claiming with Ice Beam and Fusion Bolt literally every single time it comes out, and there is nothing Cody can do about it. Had she led with Kyurem at this point, she could click Ice Beam into Fusion Bolt and claim her kill. But Rotom's still not a bad lead. Rotom should be facilitating getting this Kyurem in at all costs. That should be her priority, getting this Kyurem into the game, claiming her kills early on, and then probably cleaning late game with Scizor or Azelf, because every time Kyurem gets into this battlefield, it is claiming a kill. So turn 1, Cody makes a good play and toxics the Rotom. Cody probably recognizes how big of an issue this Rotom Volt switching on him is throughout the entire game, so I agree with that play. And Ruby Wisp back, crippling the Lando, which is a fine play. Both of them get quite a bit out of that turn. So at this point, Ruby doubles into the Sylveon. I do not understand this play. Rotom at this point can either Volt Switch if you're expecting a switch, and if you're not expecting a switch, just Hydro Pump the Lando. I don't understand what scenario the Sylveon coming in actually helps. Possibly if you're trying to heal build the Rotom, but I don't think that's really a priority at this point. Yeah, I just think she should have either pumped or volted, no matter what. Probably volt at least one time to see how Cody wants to play this. As it turns out, Cody's like very content to just throw away his Lando early on. So had she just taken this opportunity, being like, okay, I'll just kill your Lando, and pumped it, she had free volts, which is the entire rest of the game. There was just not a reason to switch out at that point. But now Cody gets rocks up at pretty much no cost, and Sylveon comes in just to protect. So the play just threw out a lot of momentum and really the opportunity to get in Kyurem. That should have been the objective the entire time. I still think she could have put up a wish at this point. And had Cody stayed in with Lando, she could have passed that wish into Kyurem, or at the very least threatened to, or possibly just heal build. But she goes hard into the Rotom, which kind of puts it into a little bit of danger, and then it gets knocked, which is really bad for Ruby. So things are starting to go really downhill, because now this Rotom has no longevity, because rocks are up, it's toxic, and it doesn't have leftovers. So this Rotom is pretty much neutered. It can still get a Volt off or two, but it's not going to get like Volts off throughout the entire game like it would have before. Unless Ruby can get these rocks off, heal Bell with Sylveon, and possibly even wish it up. And then again, she doubles, where she could have either pumped or volted. I don't understand. I guess she really wants rocks with the pert. But I don't know why the double comes out there. I don't know. This is probably way too step-by-step critiquey. But yeah, just in general, the point was this early game objective should have been using the momentum to get in the Kyurem. Just didn't happen. And just kind of like refused to kill Lando. She over-predicted around it a lot, which I can understand, not wanting to or wanting to get the momentum by predicting Lando to switch, but at the same time, by a certain point, it was pretty clear that Cody had absolutely very little value for it. I think this is the first time she finally volts, right? And then the Lando finally comes in. Yeah, so Cody at that point only wanted it to block the volt. I think Cody did undervalue his Lando, because had she just pumped him early on, then the volts were free the rest of the game. Kyurem was going to be coming in the entire game. But at the same time, Ruby kind of threw away the opportunity and kept doubling, which I really don't get. I think she really should have just utilized Rotom to the fullest while she could. Past that, yeah, she finally starts fishing for volts, but it's like at the point where Rotom's almost dead, and it doesn't even get to pump it. So I don't know why at this point, when Rotom goes down, she doesn't go Kyurem. This is the first free switch you get to Kyurem all game. Kyurem claims a kill here, and she just chooses not to take it. Maybe she's worried about rocks, but I don't see what going Sylveon and putting up a wish. Yeah, nothing's even weak. I don't know. I guess she wanted to get the heal bell off, maybe. Nothing's even... Is anything even... I guess Pert was? I don't think Pert was valuable enough. I think you just claim to kill with Kyurem. But after this point, just playing too passively and just not bringing the Kyurem in. I believe she... What happens here? Rapid spin. Yeah, wish. Probably could have wished again, but she goes hard Azelf on the switch, where she could have gone hard Kyurem just as easily, and Kyurem puts Cody in a much worse scenario than Azelf does, because Azelf is not very strong, whereas Kyurem is probably the strongest thing in the format. And Tentacruel really doesn't threaten Kyurem, so I think that was a free opportunity to get it in as well. So now you have to switch into Volk, which isn't great. Sylveon actually does it okay. But yeah, at this point, she's just lost too much. The rocks are up. Cody's kept the momentum on, and similar situation to Pete from earlier. When you're behind, you really need to make the aggressive plays, and Cody's anticipating the bullet punch at this point, so you need to U-turn. She doesn't make the aggressive play, and soiled. And by the time she finally brings in Kyurem, it's on a move that it can't even take. And yeah, so I think she really needed to get in the Kyurem early and often, utilize the Rotom Wash a bit more, utilize Wish Passing into a bit more, and utilizing Scizor U-turning into it a bit more, because she kind of just didn't do that. So yeah, that is what I believe could be improved on here. Yeah, she just had no means to break down the team at that point after Kyurem was dead. Alright, so number 10. Number 9, we're moving on. I'm not realizing that you can't see this the entire time, and the reason I wanted to have this up was because you could like be able to look on the side and see it on the bar and like know where you are in the rankings, but unfortunately that's not going to happen. You got Tepig versus PK. So this was a kind of a hacksy game. PK actually played this game not terribly in my opinion, especially early game. He did fine, and then he gets frozen, which really sucks for him here, because this is his only freeze dry switch. So if PK doesn't get frozen here, Tepig's put in a situation where he either has to sack Cryo or switch, and allow the Magnezone to stay healthy. So theoretically it should have come in and taken at least 2 more freeze dries, maybe more, depending on whether Tepig ever predicts him or not. But at the very least, he wouldn't have lost a freeze dry, or that wouldn't have been a possibility. He could have kept this around at all times, but yeah, very unfortunate freeze for PK, because this is the only thing on his team preventing him from losing to freeze dry. And he does the right play in fishing for the thaw on the first turn, because you probably weren't going to get another opportunity to. And yeah, he loses it. He possibly could have tried to keep it. Nah, you were going to lose someone to freeze dry anyways. Maybe could have gone Miltank. I don't know. But yeah, after this point, it's revealed that or was that already revealed? Yeah, he has no switch into Specs to Cosma. It's like, especially now that Zone has gone down. So it was a bit PK at this point should really be doing anything he can to keep this Necro out. He does do a good job toxing it to at least put it on timer, recognize how big of a threat it is. But after this point, things get weird. He goes into Tang, which isn't even faster. I think it dies. Or does it die at this percent? It did like 90 or something earlier, right? Where are we? I'm reading the chat. I don't think you can see it. Yeah, it did 82. This dies. I don't know why this is what comes in. Maybe because nothing else is faster, but like 295. Kingdra can be faster. I guess this one specific one must not be. I think Pelipper probably was his only choice. Probably going Pelipper and then U-turning, or not even U-turning, hard switching out into something else. What PK does seriously wrong this match is he just sits around with his fat the entire time, even though Rain is really a more hyper offensive style. He should be in his Kingdra and his Swampert applying pressure the majority of the game, but he just simply is not doing that. His Pelipper doesn't even see the field until like late. I don't know why Necro just doesn't kill. This here, maybe he was afraid of getting Toxic stalled down. I don't know. But at this point, yeah, it wishes. He gets the U-turn off, and this is where things get really dumb for PK. Like I said, you want to be applying pressure as much as possible with Rain. So here, Swampert is very free. This is Clefable seeded, so like absolute worst case scenario, you get HP grassed for like maybe 60, and then like we seed back up most of it, and then kill the following turn with Waterfall. Like there's extremely little risk and going into your Swampert here. It applies pressure, forces him to pick a sack, and then probably, if Gren doesn't kill at that point, I don't even know what he does. He probably goes into his lantern, actually. Yeah, that's definitely what he does, because his lantern is immune to both stabs, because it's an air balloon lantern. But at the very least, like, you put some pressure on him, force him to sack, actually start getting somewhere. But he U-turns into his Tangrowth, which does absolutely nothing, and just sits there. And PK proceeds to spend all 7 of his very valuable rain turns sitting here with Tangrowth doing nothing. He is accomplishing absolutely nothing. He lets Clef come in and wish Necrozma all the way back up. I'm pretty sure this is the second time it's done that too. So he's just sitting here doing absolutely nothing, and then sacks Pelipper again because he has to. And then finally brings out a Rain Sweeper on turn 28. He has no mons left, and it's just too little too late. There's nothing he can do, because he chose not to play any offense this entire game. He tries to wall everything out with Kyron, but he's already lost to Freeze Dry, which was a result of the freeze, unfortunately, but I think he still could have come back from that if he had just played his offense, but he really just chose to sit around with his Tangrowth and do nothing the entire time. So I don't knock PK too hard, because I do think he played the game fairly well, other than that passiveness in the later game. And I think he probably should have won the game had he not been frozen, because it was pretty close, and pretty close even with the hacks. But I guess we'll never know. Time to pull up the list again. Number 8, we have T-Bail. Okay, this was a really unfortunate game. Is it this one? No, not that one. Not that one. Literally everyone but the ones I clicked. There we go. This is a very unfortunate game. I have T-Bail below D-Winch, who you see here. This game's kind of just a shit show, so it's hard to rank one above the other, or like even rank this game in general. D-Winch dominates the early game, gets the lead matchup right, predicts the switch and U-turns, gets the momentum on his side. Goes Milo here instead of Nape, which is a bit questionable, because Nape probably applies a lot more pressure and puts him in a much worse scenario than Milo. But Scald switch-ins are pretty limited on T-Bail's side, so I guess I can sort of respect it. Predicts the Bulu and Ice Beams. Scald could have debatably been higher reward than Ice Beam, because Ice Beam doesn't 2-hit KO, whereas Scald has that chance to burn. But D-Winch is able to get his rocks up here, and then get a slow U-turn into Weavile to get this thing out. It's a weird play by T-Bail to decide to stay in here, because Weavile is always faster than Thundy. It always kills it. And you have a Bisharp, which is probably one of the more solid Weavile checks out there. So like, even if you don't value your Thundurus at this point, at the very least you can keep it as stack fodder. But he chooses to throw it out here when he has a Bisharp, and D-Winch misses Icicle Crash, and he's in an awful spot from this scenario. He makes the right play in going into Comfy and draining Kissing, because that's really the only thing he can do at this point. At this point, D-Winch has Mach Punch on his Infernape. So going into his Infernape forces him to take 10% life orb plus the Mach Punch, which, I don't know, probably only does like 20 or so. But at the very least, he can force T-Bail. He can force T-Bail Thundy to die much earlier than it would otherwise. T-Bail also said after the match, had Infernape come in, he just would have T-Waved it. Which, because this had T-Wave, I don't understand why you would ever do that instead of just killing it, but I guess that means he would have gotten off 2 Mach Punches, assuming the pair chance didn't come in. But he throws out his Venu, which I think was his only chance of winning this game. Venu destroys his entire team. It beats Bisharp, beats Bulutran. Beating Bulutran is the big one, and because if he keeps that around for Bulutran, keeps Rachi around for pretty much everything else, I think he can still win this game. The crit didn't matter according to D-Winch. but yeah, at this point he loses everything but Milo and Nape, and because of that icicle crash, and it's just impossible for him to come back. So yeah, unfortunate game. You really can't tell who would have won. I do feel D-Winch had the advantage. Like, I don't see, like, T-Bill definitely could have broken through with his Zam, and but T-Bill would have had a tough time breaking through and getting around the Weavile, especially with Rachi having U-turn to slow U-turn into it. I don't know. I think D. Winchell had the upper hand, but you'll never know. But which is why I rank him slightly above. But like, it's just a hard game to rank. So number 7 after D. Winchell, pretty much the same thing. I think he possibly could have managed that hacks a bit better if he went to Nape and Mach punched to try and keep Rachi and Vinu. I think those were his 2 best mons to keep to try and win the game. And Milo, if he somehow got rolls or crits, or I don't know exactly how it would have worked. But if he was able to keep these 3, I think he actually had a strong chance of winning, even against the 5v6. But yeah, unfortunate. So moving on to number 6, the last game we haven't gone over yet, Freddy versus Reggie. This is a whack game. So starting off things pretty normal. Okay, here Reggie gets quite greedy and basically kills Conk. And then Reggie decides he wants to keep his Zapdos healthy, probably for the Beedrill. Maybe for the Amoon to some extent too. And then chooses to roost up on this, and either anticipating a switch or something, and Freddy gets to play right and Drain Punches him, which puts him in an awful scenario because Conk is now like fully back to life, and Zapdos is basically dead. So Reggie gets a bit greedy there and puts him in a much worse scenario later game. So pretty standard stuff going on from there, but things start getting a bit weird around here. So Reggie anticipates the switch to the Amoon and makes the double into Glade, which is a good play. And then he chooses to just chooses to switch out against against Amoongus. My only clue I could fathom is that he wants to get in he doubles into Persian here. Like, the only thing I could fathom is that he wants Persian in versus Fortress, but like, I don't understand why having Persian in versus Fortress is advantageous. Maybe to taunt it, but like, that's really not getting you anywhere. Why make this double if you're just trying to get another double just for the sake of keeping hazards off? It's a weird play, but like, the worst that could happen to Glade here is that you get Sludge Bomb for like 20, because Misty's up, you can't get Spored, and like, evidently Freddy doesn't even realize that Misty's up and tries to Spore. So had he Zenned, he probably would have just about killed this. Goes back into it. Zends into the Fortress. And then they repeat the cycle of putting up rocks, Reggie getting rid of them, volting out, Sludge Bombing. Okay, this play was really whacked by Freddy. Reggie was complaining about it a lot. It was like a little bit of a controversy. Now, I understand that Freddy predicts him to over-predict and go for the Drain Punch, but in this scenario, your Amoongus does about 20 per attack to Glade. The reward for you getting this prediction right is 20% on Glade. Glade is at 50%. It has Drain Punch. This is a very low reward, very high risk. If you get this play wrong, you just die to Zen. You lose to Tapu Fini on the spot. It's just not a worth it play, because if Missy's gone and you get the play right and you sleep the Glade, if Glade's at like 20, you get the play right, Glade dies. All right, go for it. If you got the hard read, but you don't even get a reward for it. You get like 20. Yeah, so he ends up getting a crit and getting rewarded for his bad play, but like this was a bad play. I'll stand with Reggie there. That was a really bad play by Freddy. It works out for him and he gets rewarded with the crit, but it was a bad play. But I guess that play ends up putting Reggie on tilt, doing lots of psychological damage. Reggie starts like zenning now, and Finny's basically, Galade's basically dead. He's forced to go Finny to keep hazards off because I guess he really wants him for his arrow. Yeah, and he has to find a way to switch into this, so he has to parting shot into Galade to not die to Sludge. Plus, I don't know, he probably could have lived a Sludge. I guess he just didn't want to. Sacks Zapdos. So this end game gets really weird. He gets up the rocks here this time, forcing Freddy to rapid spin. So at this point, every time these two have interacted, Freddy's clicked Volt Switch. Now every time they've interacted, Freddy's had rocks up, so they anticipated, so Reggie had a reason to click defog the entire time. So I guess Reggie anticipates Freddy to anticipate him to actually finally attack and get scared out, which is probably the right play. Freddy should probably be scared of losing his fortress at this point because he will not have a way to switch into Glade at this point. And Freddy, if he just keeps his walls up, if Freddy doesn't risk his walls, it's very hard for him to lose this game. Because Fortress walls the Glade pretty handily. Reggie can't switch into Amoonguss, and very few things on Reggie's team even beat the Amoonguss. Which is why it was so whack to have risked it in the first place earlier. Because it is really just a win condition here. All you had to do is literally not throw it out to Glade, and he chose to do that, and got rewarded for it. But he just has to play it safely here. So I think Reggie probably makes the right play in predicting a switch, but Freddy chooses to Volt Switch again, risking the Fortress here. I guess chip on the B with the helmet. Gets volted on again. He really can't switch into a Moong at this point. Avoids poison, luckily. Reggie makes a double this time. It's a weird double because Arrow doesn't necessarily threaten out a Moong, but I guess it works. And then catches Freddy for not respecting the attacking move, which Freddy probably should have just been going a Moong instead of volting every single time. I really don't understand. Maybe if you're hard reading defog every time, but I think Reggie was right in anticipating the switch. I think Freddy was really just a bit unaware of the situation. Because there was no reason to lose the Fortress there. That's a sack and a Glade answer, and Amoonguss walls Finny to hell and back twice. So there was just no reason to ever need to risk Fortress. So get back on this thing. Here again, Freddy has an Amoonguss that walls this to hell and back. Reggie cannot switch into Amoonguss at this point. With his face, Persian Alola does not kill or cannot do anything to threaten it. Glade cannot take a Sludge Bomb. Arrow cannot take a Sludge Bomb. Finny cannot beat Amoonguss one-on-one. Amoonguss wins the game from here, or at the very least forces a sack to bring in Glade. Not only does going into Amoonguss here make it so that you don't have to lose your conch, but you also just put Reggie in a worse scenario than the conch does anyways, because Amoonguss cannot be dealt with while this conch can. So once again, Freddy with his Fortress and his conch throws away Amon, where not only did he not have to throw it away, but going Amoonguss just put him, kept them on and put him in a better scenario versus Reggie. I I guess he gets more damage on it, but like he was gonna get a sack no matter what if he went Amoonguss and keep his conch. So now he goes Amoonguss, but like just like Fortress, too late. You just threw away your Mon. This is where Reggie not getting greedy with the Zapdos would have been nice too. But now this is taking big damage. Reggie has to pick one to Spore, or even Sludge Bomb at this point. If this lives a Zen from Gallade, I think... Actually, no, it doesn't even really matter. Never mind. Yeah, no, Sludge Bombing there was fine. I don't know why you ever switch out. Everything... Maybe if Arrow lives a Sludge Bomb at 14, then maybe. And if you get at -1, then maybe it was the right play to switch out. Otherwise, I think Sludge Bomb eventually claimed you won even if you're at -1. So I don't think there's a really reason to switch out unless that is the case. And if that's the case, then I guess it's not a bad play. But like even then, you get switched on. So here Reggie gets, or no, it's not quite yet. That Reggie gets really whack. Sacks that guy, goes back into Finny. Oh no, it goes into Gallade. Yeah, Gallade has no switches at this point because Freddy threw away his Fortress. Kills that. I doubt that mattered. So Reggie goes to sack his Finny here because he can't switch into Arrow and he can't go hard Arrow. So here Freddy chooses to not kill the Finny, because if Reggie wanted to keep this Finny as a sack, then he would have just gone hard Arrow, because that's the same thing as going Arrow right now. So I don't know why you would ever not just Poison Jab right here, but I guess Freddy chooses not to. Maybe predicting the switch to Arrow. I don't understand why you would ever not Poison Jab unless that was what you're doing, but like the fact that he went Finny before this showed his intention was clearly not going Arrow. So Reggie actually gets to keep the sack, which is good for him, and Freddy takes a big old pump for absolutely no reason when he could have just Poison Jabbed and killed this. So another really whack play from Freddy. Freddy was like in an absolutely almost unlosable position earlier on, and through all these like unoptimized plays, he's letting Reggie back into this game when Reggie has no business being in this game because he got greedy and let the conch come in, let Zap die for no reason, set up his Volk a little bit too early, and then played his Gallade a bit trash. Also, Gallade probably should have had Fire Punch so it wasn't walled by Fortress. It probably had some tech from you, but still. Yeah, I'd still say Fire Punch over Drain Punch. I don't see who Drain Punch is here over Zen. So Reggie gets super whack here though. He chooses to switch. So he decides to keep Finny as a sack, which is a fine play if you want to do that, and goes into Arrow. But like the cost of keeping Finny of not sacking Finny is Arrow's HP right here. He chooses to just tempt the crit gods and try and roost up all the way, and then just goes back and sacks the Finny, where like now that literally gains him nothing, because like what. So he's at 26%. Sacks the Finny. Still at 26%. Like, he gains absolutely nothing from that sack. I really cannot understand why he makes that. He could have just kept that sack for later. Absolutely no reason not to. Or no reason to make that sack. It didn't gain him anything. If he wanted to sack Finny in the first place, then he could have kept that extra health on Arrow. And if you didn't need that extra health on Arrow, then just don't sack the Finny. It just didn't gain you anything. Sack it later when you need that sack. But he just decides to tempt the crit gods until Freddy decides at some point he doesn't want to go for the crit anymore, which is whatever, I guess. And Reggie puts up his rocks in that opportunity as he gets slept. So here, Freddy starts spamming Spore, which is a really whack play, because you should at all costs be keeping the Gallade out. You should just be spamming Sludge, because if the Glade comes in, it's claiming a kill, and you actually probably lose at that point, or at the very least, because Swallow is effectively dead, so you would have to sack your Swallow, and then go into your B drill, which takes 25, and then Arrow is at full. You have to play around with sleep turns. Like, your worst case scenario is this Glade comes in. You need to be spamming Sludge Bomb to keep it out. I think Reggie is definitely not going to risk that. Freddy choosing to click Sludge on any given turn here, because that's just a losing play. But Freddy should not be even giving Reggie the opportunity to possibly think about making that play. He should be spamming Sludge. There's no reason not to. Like, I guess he wants to keep the Arrow permanently asleep, and I think what he wants to do is sleep it instantly to go hard B drill the first turn it's asleep. But if that was the plan from the beginning, I don't know why you didn't just go hard B drill the first turn you set it asleep, because like all these spores are useless if that was the plan. So they were just opportunities for your Glade to come in. So really whack play by Freddy there too, which is really just like, he goes B drill the first turn he's asleep here, but like if that was the plan, why did you spore those 3 times and give Glade the opportunity to come in and actually just claim? He gets the knock here, and Reggie gets the early wake and kills this, and that's GG. So really thrown away game by Freddy. Letting the Swallow take a pump for no reason, letting Fortress take a pump and die for no reason, letting Conch take a Moonblast and die for no reason, when all those scenarios just going Amoongus saved all 3 of those mons. And even then, when in all those turns where he could have just gone Amoongus to save other mons, he also kept Amoongus in on a Glade one time and choose to like test his fate. So like Freddy just needed to not do anything stupid, just switch into his checks and minimize risk, and he just did not do that, and took like two unnecessary pumps, 1 unnecessary Moonblast, all of which could have been avoided by going into the Amoongus. So yeah, really choked battle. Reggie also had some weird plays, like getting greedy with his Zapdos early on, sacking Finny for absolutely no reason late game when that sack was extremely valuable. He ended up not needing it, but it was still valuable. And getting played really hard with his Glade, and also like making doubles into Persian when it made no sense. So I have Freddy at 6 over the rest of them, because Freddy did have a close game, and I consider Reggie a better battler than most people in the league. So taking Reggie close is no easy feat, and it was a close game and intelligently played and intelligently prepped for on both sides. It just like lots of really suboptimal plays at the end by Freddy threw away his lead and caused him to lose. So I have him below people who just lost convincingly, whereas he at least had what it took to put himself in the lead and then throw away the lead. I don't know if that makes sense. And then these 2 guys here just had no clear winner to their victory. I went over Tepig a bit already, but he kind of just like sat there and he froze the Magnezone and then just wish passed over and over again while PK sat there in his Tangrowth, and then just died slowly and didn't put up rain. And even when he put up rain, just sat there with Tangrowth. So I have Tepig a bit higher because his win was convincing, but it was a bit of a hacksy win, so I have him lower than most of the other coaches who have wins. So yeah, I guess there's that. But there was some smart prep, like Scarf Gran, the double, or the Lantern that's immune to both Swampert stabs. Although Vaporeon checks Swampert better than Lantern in the first place, but I guess whatever. Moving on to number 4, we have Reggie, which we went over here. Made a few small misplays, or yeah, a few small misplays along the way and got really tilted, but in the end triumphed through Freddie's choking. But um, yeah, talked about that a fair amount already. Uh, because the win wasn't super dominant and had a few glaring misplays, I have him ranked a bit lower. But I also, Freddie was probably better competition than a lot of the top coaches' wins. It's just that the win was much less convincing and required that first turn wake. I don't know what the role was if the Beedrill killed without that first turn wake exactly, but like even then, this game was just messy. The coaches above him just have more convincing wins. Jolty dismembered Mars. Mars kind of just threw away all of his breaking power in the first few turns. Jolty did have some cool prep though, I'll give him that, with the berries that caught Mars off guard. So yeah, what's nice about doing the power rankings this way is you do half the battles, and then the other one you pretty much just covered the top list. Cody pretty much dunked on Ruby. Not a whole lot to say there, I guess. I don't wholly agree with him throwing away his Lando as early as he did. Just because it would have allowed Rotom to be such a massive threat later on, but it ended up working out for him, I guess. So I guess there's that. His prep was solid though, and he got up his rocks and executed his game plan. I think there just wasn't too much that Ruby did to put up a resistance to what Cody was trying to do, which made the victory quite dominant. So once these coaches who all win kind of start to get tested versus other coaches, the rankings will start to be more clear who's on top and of everyone who won. And lastly, I have Jack, who I feel like did nothing I really disagree with when he was playing. He kind of just shat on Pete. Pete threw away everything it required for him to win, but at the same time, Jack didn't do anything wrong. He just did what he had to do. I think maybe throwing away Serena so early was a bit weird when he had a Mega Arrow, but I guess maybe he didn't want Mega Arrow taking chip. Or throwing the Serena away to the Talonflame. But yeah, I guess that's about it for the power rankings for week 1, and I'll see you next week.